I told my best friend I was moving away. She didn't say a word. She just kissed me. The hardest goodbyes are never the ones we prepare for. They arrive quietly, hiding inside ordinary moments, waiting until one sentence changes everything forever. I thought I was simply telling my best friend that I was moving away. I expected tears, maybe anger, maybe silence. I never expected her to close the distance between us, look at me with eyes full of years of unspoken feelings, and kiss me without saying a single word. In that one breathtaking moment, every memory we had shared suddenly meant something entirely different, and I realized I had been blind to the greatest love story of my life. Before we begin, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the incredible power of love that waits patiently through the years, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment telling us where you're watching from, share this story with someone special, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us continue bringing heartfelt stories that remind us all what truly matters. There was a time when I believed life always rewarded careful planning. I had worked tirelessly since college, chasing promotions, collecting achievements, and convincing myself that success was measured by the size of a paycheck or the title printed on a business card. Every decision I made seemed logical, calculated, and safe. Yet the one thing I never planned was falling in love with someone who had quietly stood beside me through every chapter of my life without asking for anything in return. Emma had been my best friend for nearly 12 years. We met during our first week at university after both accidentally grabbing the same coffee from a campus cafe. Instead of arguing, we laughed about it, shared the drink, and spent the next 4 hours talking as if we'd known each other forever. Some friendships begin with dramatic moments. Ours began with a paper cup and a conversation that somehow never really ended. After graduation, life pulled us in different directions, but never too far apart. We found jobs in the same city, celebrated birthdays together, survived breakups, family tragedies, career disappointments, and countless late-night conversations that stretched until sunrise. She was always the first person I called whenever something good happened, and somehow she was also the first person I called whenever everything fell apart. Looking back, I realized she had always been there in ways no one else ever was. When my father passed away unexpectedly, it wasn't my coworkers or distant relatives who stayed beside me through those impossible days. It was Emma. She quietly handled phone calls I couldn't answer, brought meals I barely touched, and simply sat with me when words became meaningless. She never tried to fix my grief. She simply refused to let me carry it alone. Still, I convinced myself that was simply what best friends did. Years passed, and I dated other women. Some relationships lasted months. One nearly became an engagement. Emma smiled through all of them. She listened whenever I needed advice, encouraged me when things were going well, and comforted me when they inevitably ended. Not once did she complain. Not once did she ask me to choose between our friendship and someone else. I never noticed how her smile sometimes faded just a little whenever I talked excitedly about another relationship. Perhaps love often hides behind extraordinary patience. Everything changed on an ordinary Tuesday morning. My company offered me an incredible promotion in Seattle, nearly 2,000 miles away. It came with a salary I had dreamed about, leadership responsibilities, and opportunities that could define the rest of my career. Everyone congratulated me. My coworkers called it the chance of a lifetime. My family insisted I'd regret saying no. So I accepted. For nearly a week, I avoided telling Emma. Every time we met, I found another excuse. Somehow saying the words aloud would make them real, and part of me wasn't ready for that reality. Finally, one rainy evening, I invited her over to help me pack. Cardboard boxes filled my apartment. Books disappeared from shelves that had held them for years. Picture frames lay wrapped in newspaper. The home that had witnessed so much of my life already looked like a memory. Emma arrived carrying takeout from our favorite restaurant, smiling as always. She looked around the apartment and immediately understood. Her smile disappeared. I took a deep breath and quietly admitted that I was moving away. Then everything became strangely still. She didn't cry. She didn't argue. She didn't ask why. She simply stared at me with eyes that seemed to carry years of hidden emotions. For a moment, I thought she might turn around and leave forever. Instead, she stepped closer. Without speaking a single word, she gently placed one hand against my face. Then she kissed me. It wasn't rushed or dramatic. It was heartbreak. It was hope. It was 12 years of unspoken love compressed into one impossible moment. When she finally stepped back, tears filled her eyes, but she still couldn't speak. She simply picked up her purse, walked toward the door, and left. I stood frozen inside my half-empty apartment, unable to process what had just happened. Everything I thought I understood about my life suddenly felt incomplete. That night, I didn't sleep. Instead, memories replayed endlessly inside my mind. The vacations we took together. The holidays she spent with my family. The birthday surprises. The countless times she canceled her own plans because I needed someone. The way she always remembered the smallest details about my life. The way she looked at me when she thought I wasn't paying attention. How had I missed it? Or perhaps the more painful question was whether I had noticed all along but been too afraid to admit what it meant. The next morning, I called her. She didn't answer. I texted. Nothing. Hours became days. My moving date came closer while the silence between us grew heavier. For the first time in years, I felt completely alone. Packing my apartment suddenly felt meaningless. Every box reminded me that I wasn't just leaving a city. I was leaving the person who had quietly become the center of my entire life. One afternoon, while sorting through old photographs, I found a picture from our college graduation. We stood side by side, laughing at something outside the camera's view. Looking carefully, I noticed something I had somehow ignored for over a decade. She wasn't looking at the camera. She was looking at me. With a smile that said everything. I finally understood. Love doesn't always arrive suddenly. Sometimes it waits patiently until we're finally ready to recognize it. The following evening, I drove to the small lakeside park where we had spent countless weekends talking about life. She was already there. Sitting on our favorite bench. Watching the sunset. She looked exhausted, as though she hadn't slept either. This time, neither of us rushed to speak. The silence no longer felt awkward. It felt honest. Eventually, she admitted that she'd loved me for years. She never planned to tell me because she valued our friendship too much to risk losing it. Watching me build relationships with other women had hurt more than she ever allowed herself to admit, but seeing me happy had always mattered more than her own feelings. When I announced I was leaving, something inside her finally broke. The kiss hadn't been planned. It had simply escaped from a heart that could no longer remain silent. Listening to her, I realized how incredibly selfish I had been without intending to. I had accepted her unconditional love without ever asking what it cost her. Yet instead of blaming me, she apologized. That apology shattered me. No one should ever apologize for loving someone sincerely. I confessed that after she left my apartment, every future I had imagined suddenly felt empty. The promotion that had once seemed so important now looked insignificant compared to losing the one person who had never stopped believing in me. Success suddenly had a different definition. It wasn't measured by salary. It wasn't measured by promotions. It was measured by who was waiting beside you when everything else disappeared. The following week became the most difficult of my life. The moving company expected confirmation. My employer needed final paperwork. Friends celebrated my exciting future. No one knew I spent every night questioning everything I had worked toward. I realized life sometimes offers us impossible choices because it forces us to discover what truly matters. Career opportunities can come again. Some people cannot. On the morning I was supposed to leave, the moving truck arrived exactly on schedule. The driver knocked politely. I looked around the apartment one final time. Every packed box represented the future I thought I wanted. Then I picked up my phone. With trembling hands, I called my manager. I declined the promotion. The silence on the other end lasted nearly 30 seconds before disbelief turned into disappointment. I understood. Professionally, it made no sense. Personally, it made perfect sense. An hour later, I stood outside Emma's apartment carrying nothing except a small bouquet of wildflowers I had picked up from a neighborhood florist. When she opened the door, surprise filled her face. She noticed there were no suitcases. No moving truck. No goodbye. Only me. I admitted that I had spent years searching for the perfect future while completely overlooking the person who had quietly been building one beside me all along. I told her I wasn't choosing between love and success. I was choosing the version of success that actually meant something. For the first time since I'd known her, she cried without trying to hide it. She wrapped her arms around me as though afraid I might disappear if she let go. This time, when we kissed, there was no uncertainty. Only relief. Life didn't magically become perfect after that. Relationships built from deep friendship carry unique challenges. We had to relearn each other, shifting from familiar comfort into vulnerable honesty. There were awkward moments, disagreements, fears, and lingering doubts. But every challenge reminded us that we were finally walking in the same direction instead of standing quietly on opposite sides of the same invisible line. Years later, people often ask us how we met. They expect some romantic story filled with fate and dramatic coincidences. We simply smile. Because the truth is even more beautiful. Our love didn't begin with our first kiss. It began years earlier through countless acts of kindness, loyalty, forgiveness, patience, and unwavering friendship. The kiss merely revealed what had been quietly growing all along. Sometimes the greatest love stories aren't about finding the right person. They're about finally seeing the person who never stopped standing beside you. If this story has touched your heart in any way, please take a moment to leave a comment with the words, "True love waits," so we know you stayed until the end. We'd truly love to read your thoughts. As life continued, Emma and I often walked back to that same lakeside bench where everything finally changed. We watched seasons come and go, celebrated victories that felt more meaningful because we shared them, and supported one another through new hardships that inevitably arrived. Every time I looked at her, I silently thanked that unforgettable moment when she chose courage over silence. Her kiss didn't just change our relationship, it changed my understanding of love itself. I learned that the most extraordinary people often don't arrive dramatically. They quietly remain, loving us through our worst days, believing in us when we doubt ourselves, and waiting with incredible patience for us to open our hearts. And before you go, if this story made you smile, cry, or remember someone special in your own life, please like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, subscribe to the channel, and leave a heartfelt comment below. Your support means more than you know, and together we can continue sharing stories that remind the world that kindness, hope, forgiveness, and true love still exist.